This is a history of Anton Cadillac, Jesse Strange, Beaver Island, and Detroit in the fur trade. Cadillac was born March 5th of 1658 in St. Nicolas de la Greve, France. He was known as a governor, trader, and explorer throughout his life. He is known as the founder of Detroit, and at the age of 17 he joined the French service, but some people say he borrowed a military record from an older brother. In 1683, he left France at the age of 25 to take a trip to the New World. He got married in 1687, eventually had children, and he went back to Paris in 1688 and became a part of the Secretary of the Navy. In 1692, he was promoted to lieutenant, and in 1694, Frontenac promoted him to a commander. When he was promoted to commander in 1694, he was the commander of Fort Duquesne, which was located in the straits of between the Upper and Lower Peninsula. He To be friends with the Indians, he traded alcohol with them, which was forbidden. And in 1695, he came across a couple Jesuit fathers who accused him of this, um, told some officials, and he was sent to Canada for his actions. But in 1697, he was authorized by the king to make his new project, which was Fort Pontchartrain. When the fort was closed temporarily in 1698, he managed to persuade the minister in charge of colonies, Count Pontchartrain, to build new posts. Thus, in 1701, in Detroit, a new post was made, and it was named Fort Pontchartrain du Detroit. In 1702, his family joined him at the fort. His power was he controlled the monopoly of gunpowder and alcohol, but he also issued fur trading licenses. But he was caught in 1704, and he was sent to prison in Quebec for trafficking alcohol and fur. He was also granting land that was not his, and they were known as ribbon farms. In 1708, Cadillac was indicted on charges of abuse and authority. Many people did not like Cadillac because of his illegal use of substances that he traded, also his attitude to others, and his stinginess with his property, and not being a team player. He was relieved of duty at Pontchartrain in 1710 and was told to go to La Louisiana, which is now Mobile, Alabama. He was ordered to leave immediately, but didn't end up there until 3 years later. That same year, the king named him the governor of Louisiana. While in Louisiana, he kept to his old ways and continued to illegally sell and trade certain goods. In 1717, he was relieved of duty in Louisiana and was headed on his way back to France. But once he got to France, he was arrested with his son. After his time in jail for the next 4 years, he spent his time going through all his lawsuits. And in 1721, the king at the time awarded him with the Order of St. Louis for his service to the country. Eventually, on October 16, 1730, he died at the age of 72 in his home of Castelnaudary, France. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Jesse Strange, or James Strange, was born in CPO, New York on March 21st, 1813. He was a leader. He led a group of Mormons under his name. His followers were called Strangites. He was also a politician and he was a monarch. He was a part of Michigan's House of Reps from 1853 until his death. From a young age, he always wanted to be a leader like Napoleon, and he always wanted to be a part of a state legislature. He felt like it was a necessity in his life. He was originally baptized as a Baptist, but distanced himself away from the religion. He soon met other people, other men, and decided to change to a different religion, which was Mormon. He started gathering people, getting more followers to travel with him through Utah and Wisconsin to preach his way of things and to show what he thinks is right. He eventually ended up in Michigan. In 1847, him and his followers made it to Beaver Island in Lake Michigan. He crowned himself the king of the island, ruling that territory in the state of Michigan. He sought out to make himself and his group of Mormons a political force in Michigan. He also wanted to control the economy and the political side of Mackinac with the introduction of a Mormon police. He told his followers any enemy of him was an enemy against God, or any enemy of their beliefs were an enemy against God. Eventually, on July 8th, 1850, he announced that he was the king of the island. To this day, he is the only person to become a king in a state that was already a part of the Union. Even though Strang wanted to control everything on Beaver Island, the island was still a part of Mackinac County, so the island still had to abide by the state laws. Once he realized this, he got into politics, and he got pretty high up. He wanted Beaver Island to become its own country, to be under Mormon control. He made a statement in a newspaper in February 1851. The statement was called Revelation of God, and it came out as a declaration of war to the state of Michigan. In 1852, Strange and his followers were arrested and under trial from United States law to prosecute all Mormons. When they got back from the trial, Strang was awarded the King of Justice of Peace, township supervisor, and a chairman of the Board of Health by the state legislature. Him and the Mormons didn't get along. Or, excuse me, him and the Gentiles didn't get along. They had small feuds back and forth, most likely just verbal, nothing physical. But then later in time, the Gentiles planned an attack on Strang and the island, but he got notice of this beforehand, and he was able to counterattack, and the attack was over in 4 days. They gave Strang the nickname King Jimmy, and he claimed that he told his followers that the Gentiles are nothing to be a worry of, and they are in poor economic trouble, and they can't sustain themselves. His own followers eventually got tired of his ways and how he's running their life, and planned to team up with them and overthrow him. But he knew about it and thought he was invulnerable and couldn't be touched. He was assassinated on the USS Michigan in 1856 on June 16th. He was shot 3 times on the main deck. He got no medical attention in the ship, and he was taken to Fort Wisconsin. 3 weeks later, the King of Beaver Island died on July 9, 1856, at the age of 43. The Kingdom of Beaver Island was finished when he died. Detroit and the fur trade. The history of Detroit spans a far way back, but most notably in the late 16th and early 17th century, with the Native Americans that inhabited the area. The Potawatomi, Iroquois, Huron, and the Ottawa people all had established a presence in Michigan. When the French and the British started to come over to the New World, everything started to change. The Europeans came to the New World, and that's when the fur trading really skyrocketed, and other types of trading. But the French made their forts and started to trade with the natives, mainly trading for fur, but traded for many other things also, because fur was a big thing over in Europe. They would give the natives anything they wanted for the fur in return: guns, ammo, liquor, supplies, tools, food, anything. Fur trading alone was a very big part of Detroit and Michigan before Michigan even became a state. The forts had a lot of stuff to do with the fur trading, especially in 1701. Cadillac got French approval to make the fort in Detroit. He was the main person at Detroit, and he controlled mainly the monopoly of gunpowder, but he also was big with the fur. And even though also later in the future, more companies started coming out to control the fur trade. But during this time, he was really the only main person, the only big person in the 1700s. But in 1760, when the French surrendered to the British, the fort was taken under British control, but not until the American Revolutionary War, and then America took back over the fort in Detroit. But in 1808, a man named Jacob Astor created the American Fur Company. It was an immediate competitor to the British Northwest Company for fur trading and other types of trading. Astor had posts ranging from Detroit all the way to Kalamazoo and all the way up to Sault Ste. Marie and in Mackinac. But in 1828, he controlled 95% of the trade, and he blew the British Northwest Company out, basically. But once the financial crisis in 1837 hit, known as the Panic of 1837, it hit the nation hard. It hit a lot of aspects hard, not just the fur trade, but it did hit the fur trade. And eventually in 1854, the American Fur Company closed its doors, and this marked the ending of the fur trade in the Great Lakes state.